isn't stuff that just gets given out and disseminated to people in guidebooks as children, particularly if you've had an emotionally immature parent that hasn't had these skills or coping strategies to be able to teach you. Okay, so in this incident, okay, we need to learn, when we are triggered, we need to learn how to respond instead of how to react. Okay, and that's the most important thing. So one of the things that you said there was that you need to get out of fight or flight. Perfect. Okay, in this incident, you received a text message that triggered all of your internal battles of inferiority, of not enoughness, of feeling bullied, of feeling, persecuted, all of those feelings that came out as a result of somebody sending you a text message. Now, this woman's intention when she sent you that text message was none of the things that you felt. That's the first thing we need to recognize. We need to recognize that when she sent you that text message, she wasn't trying to make you feel inferior. She wasn't trying to bully you. She wasn't trying to make you feel horrendous or awful or terrible about yourself. What she was trying to do was put across her opinion about something that she wanted, possibly stupidly so, possibly emotionally immature so on her perspective, but that's that. We can't deal with that. We can't change the way that people talk to us. We can only change the way that we react and respond, okay? So in that time, what we need to recognize is actually the truth of the matter is she's not trying to hurt you in that moment. That's the first thing we need to step back from, because everything, when we get triggered, everything in our body is going, we're being attacked. We're being attacked and we need to respond as if we're being attacked. That's our little inner child. That's our shadow self that is concerned that we're about to go down the same trauma route as we had when we were a child. So it's looking out constantly for the pitfalls that look a little bit like what happened to us when we were children, okay? So when you see something that looks similar, reminds you of a bullying incident, reminds you of abuse in childhood or anything like that, this part of yourself is triggered and it's overreactive, okay? It's overreactive. So we need to recognize right now, I'm not being attacked and I'm being triggered and my trigger is overreactive. So the first thing we need to do, very right, is you need to take a step back from that thing. Whatever it is, a text message, an email, somebody in your face, whatever it is, we need to take a step back and we need to go and do some deep breath work, okay? And pull ourselves out of fight or flight. That's the first thing we need to do. Then we need, once we've calmed down, we need to come back into whatever's triggered us, okay, with a cooler mind and recognize that the trigger is not the initial trauma, okay? The trauma that we're being responding to is bullying in childhood, is a traumatic relationship with our parent, is something that's happened years and years and years ago. However, when we're triggered, we react to that person in real time in the same way as if the same incident has happened years ago is happening. So when we become conscious and aware of that, we can recognize that actually we are overreacting. Okay, and when we need to do that, we need to be really clear and honest with ourselves, because if we don't recognize that we're overreacting to a trigger that has nothing to do with the actual trauma, the actual trauma that's caused us to be on that high alert for these things that feel a little bit like the bullying or the trauma or things that have happened to us in childhood, then we end up bleeding on people that didn't cut us, okay, which is what was happening in this situation. Now, I would come back to this text message with a cool mind, okay, and a calm mind after I've gone and done some breath work and stunted my fight or flight response, okay? A little bit of soothing, a little bit of self-soothing, a little bit of the Havening technique, a little bit of a calm down. Hang on a minute, Laura, you've been triggered. This is not the same thing that happened to you when you were 5 or when you were 20 or when you were 26. Whenever these things happen, the original trauma, we talk ourselves off of that ledge. And then when we come back to the text, we actually break down what has happened in that text message. Now, when you're calm and untriggered, you're able to look at it with a different viewpoint. Instead of your brain screaming at you, we're being attacked and we need to react, okay? You can look at it and you can go, right, actually, what's happening here? This person is asking me to do something. It could be a little bit rude. It could be a little bit confrontational. It could be that she's a little thoughtless or a little bit careless with her words. And when we look at it like that, when we're not hugely triggered, that is what it is. It's a bit careless. It's a bit thoughtless. It's not, this person is trying to attack me and harm me. Okay, so when we pull out of that, we can look at this. We can look at the text message or whatever it is that's triggered us, the incident that's triggered us, with a little bit more of sense, a little bit more rationale. Because again, when you're triggered, you're down in this very primordial part of our brain. We want to come back up into the higher functioning part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, so we can actually flipping think. Okay, so now we're looking at this text message and we're like, right, okay, hang on. What is actually this person asking me? What is actually going on here? You can look at it in a clearer version to see whether or not, is this person actually attacking me? Am I being triggered as a result of something that happened 10, 15, 20 years ago that feels like this because I am pattern matching, rather than that this is actually something that's happening? And the truth of the matter is I would say 99% times with triggers is your pattern matching. The thing that you're looking at is not the thing that's happening. And we overreact. And in those moments, we can destroy relationships with people as a result of us not being in control of what's happening to ourselves. And this is why the shadow work's really important, why the inner child healing is really important, and why recognizing when you've gone into a fight or flight is just vital. Because when you can recognize it, you can pull yourself back and you can take yourself away from the situation so that you can help yourself to stop reacting and start responding. Now, when you didn't reply to that message, what happened was it was like a continuation of a flight or fight response, in effect. So the fact that you chose not to respond to it or reply to it, and you just kind of were, you just kind of put a thumbs up, which I would have said, actually, that's a kind of good thing. You kind of stepped away to take time away from it rather than just reacting to it. But you also didn't choose to respond to it. And so with the lack of a response, what happened was like a continuation of a fight or flight response, which then triggered like attachment style issues of having like an anxious attachment style and an avoidant attachment style, which is called a chaotic. So with that, you started to get very anxious about what was going to happen as a result of this situation, and worrying about when's she going to text back, when am I going to text back, what am I going to do about this situation. But then you also stepped into kind of dismissive and fearful avoidant, where it was like, I don't want this thing in my life, it's frightening me and I'm pushing it away instead. Now, the difficulty with doing that is that you have then created a situation where it's like a zero-sum game. Nobody's going to win as a result of this situation. What I would have done in that moment is I would have come back after I'd kind of like decided not to respond to that text message immediately. So I could have gone down, calmed down. I may have written down, a few ideas about what I would have written down, and actually sat down with a pen and paper and think, right, well, how am I going to respond to this in a way that doesn't make her look like an asshole and doesn't make me look like an asshole? Okay. And at that point, honesty is a good one. You can say like, actually, sorry, it's taken me a while to respond to this email or this text message. Sorry, it's taken me a while to respond to you, but actually that was quite triggering because it reminded me of some stuff that happened to me when I was younger, when I was at hair salon school. That's not the thing, but hairdressing school. And you can be honest about these things with people. And if they're good people, if they're good friends, they will understand that. They will recognize, hang on a minute, you've just given vulnerability. She may also give mutual vulnerability back, which strengthens a friendship. But the fact that you didn't reply, and then the next thing that happened was that you are telling yourself a rhetoric of, this person's going to screw me over, steal money from me, do these things. You're then again responding to a narrative in your head that doesn't exist, which is the same thing as what you did in the first instance, where it looked, it's pattern matching, yeah? It looks like a duck, smells like a duck, must be a duck. It's not a flipping duck, Now, this is all trauma in the brain. It's all your brain desperately trying to protect you from the incidences that happened before. But what we need to recognize when we're doing this pattern matching as adults is that you are not reliant on this person for your survival. Okay? When you were a kid, when you're, even at hair salon school, there is some level of hierarchy there, where it puts people at a disadvantage, where you do become reliant on the hierarchy in some way, shape or form for your life progressing. Okay, so it's kind of the same role as what a parent would play. Children, if you've got a scrutinizing parent or somebody who's mean, narcissistic parent, abusive parent, these parents, you rely on them for your survival. They're the ones that are feeding you, clothing you, housing you. So of course you're reliant on these people. That's why the reaction is so severe when you get triggered. But what we need to recognize is that in this incident that we're speaking about here for you, there was no danger for you. There's no danger for you. So when you can soothe yourself and recognize that there's no danger here, you cannot be hurt in the same way you were hurt when you were a child. You cannot be hurt in the same way that you were when you were being bullied by a hierarchy. Okay, so where's the problem? There's literally no danger. The danger is all made up inside your mind, and you're responding to the stories that you're telling yourself. Okay, which is all the ego, all the shadow self, telling you a story to protect you, thinking it's helping you, but actually what it's done is destroy a friendship unnecessarily. And it's also left you feeling like shit and portraying a side of yourself to the world that doesn't really exist, because now people will perceive you as being somebody that is passive aggressive, is suddenly just 1 minute is very friendly, then the next minute shuts down. And people that don't understand this kind of hot and cold and where it's coming from, this is where you start to see people who are the abused people becoming the aggressors in their next relationships, because instead of learning how to respond, they're very, very reactive. I've just made a new video about this. I've got some videos coming about this week, so I'll send them over to you. But does that make sense? So what we need to do is we need to recognize we're triggered. We need to take a step back. We need to recognize that we're pattern matching and see that the pattern matching isn't a realistic thing. It's a story our brain is telling ourselves. So separate between the story and the reality. And once you do that, you can actually come back into the situation. And instead of responding to the story your brain's telling you, you can respond to what is actually happening in the reality, which is, at the worst, somebody being a little bit thoughtless. And somebody being a little bit thoughtless with their words isn't going to cave your world in and is not going to traumatize you in the same way as you've been traumatized previously. Does that make sense? It's big. It's big.